Welcome back to the card pool, and I know why you're here. Find that money.
I'm your host, Kyle.
And he's your host, Kyle. I'm Harry Stew right now until I get a haircut. And today we're going to be looking at the money cards that we find in Coldsnap.
Indeed. Again, this is going from number 1 all the way down to the 10th money card. These are the cards that we could not pick for our hidden gems because they're just too valuable. So
everyone knows them. Are they truly hidden? No. It's like knowing, hey, what's the Mona Lisa as a valuable art piece? Everyone knows about it.
But we thought we'd talk about them anyway.
Yeah, just so if you don't know about them, just to bring some light. So moving on to the first card, Kyle's gonna take it away.
All right, will do. So our number 1 money card of the set at $41. Woo, that's a lot of money. Thrumbing Stone. Now this is an artifact, costs 5 to play, and it is actually legendary as well. So all spells you control have Ripple 4. So what does that mean? So whenever you play a spell, you can then reveal the top 4 cards of your deck because it's Ripple 4. You can then play any revealed cards with the same name as that spell without paying their mana cost, and then put the rest on the bottom of your library. And yes, spells that you then cast with Thrumbing Stone also have Ripple 4. So in theory, if you had a bunch of cards with the same name, you could just keep going and going and going until you played them all. Of course, in Commander, this kind of sucks, right? Because we can't have any cards with the same name in our deck. However, there are some certain exceptions to that. There are a growing but small number of cards like Shadowborn Apostles, Persistent Petitioners, Relentless Rats.
Those are the iconic ones.
Yeah, Relentless Rats is the really infamous Thrumbing Stone combo deck, because then you can essentially have, you know, rats on rats on rats, and they're all huge.
Yeah,
so
it's an easy way to win out the game and swing big.
Yeah, this is a combo piece. It's never been reprinted, which is a big reason why it is so much money. And it is amazing with those kind of cards that you can have more than 4 of in your deck. It's really the only reason to play this card in Commander.
Yeah, you wouldn't really use this with like a 7 dwarves, more or less.
No, because there's only 7 of them.
It doesn't really work like that.
You just have to, smarter people than me have the math all figured out as to what the correct ratio is to play out your entire deck. But let's just say you can have a lot of them and it will probably work.
Yeah, and the good thing about this is tunable in a variety of ways. It's legendary, it's an artifact. I mean, the only thing that this really wouldn't work for is something like a treasure mage. However, it depends on what colors you are in. And again, if you're using Relentless Rats, you're in black and you can tutor this, no problem.
Exactly. So just one of the infamous cards from this set, but it's really, really powerful.
Oh, yeah.
If you know how to use it.
Now, moving on to number 2. This is a very famous land that we have found throughout Magic for a variety of reasons. We're talking about Dark Depths. Now, this is around a $32 card. It always fluctuates on if it's been reprinted or not. It's a legendary snowland, and you're like, yes, I can use the mana to use the effects. You can't, because it doesn't produce mana. This card actually reads, it comes into play with 10 ice counters on it. And for 3 mana, you can go ahead and remove an ice counter from this card. And when there are no more ice counters on it, you sacrifice it. And if you do, you put an indestructible, legendary 2020 black avatar creature token with flying named Merit Lodge into play. Now, and actually this is kind of interesting because you think about it, it's this big, crazy, goofy looking tentacle monster, and it's not an Eldrazi. Like,
no, although plenty of people have speculated that Merit Lodge may be one of the Eldrazi. We don't really know.
Or an off-spawn, or
maybe
like
they'll confirm that at some point in the future. But as Stu said, this is not really that great on its own because it's a land that doesn't produce mana, and also it takes probably 10 turns for it to actually do anything.
But let's bring it back up real fast, because there's one thing to note about this, is that this thing comes into play with 10 counters on them.
Right, comes into play with them.
So there are things that get around this, and the things that are really notable is Vesuva, which is a land that comes into play, and you target a copy of any land.
Actually, no, it doesn't get around that. I was wondering if you were going to bring that up. Vesuva does not, because Vesuva enters the battlefield like any other clone as a copy of something, so it would enter with 10 ice counters on it because it is a copy of that
I take that back then.
It works with Thespian Sage.
That's the other one.
That's the one you're thinking of.
And also there's another thing to note as well, where it's like if you have something like Solemnity, you would need Solemnity
out already.
No, reverse. Afterwards. It would remove the counters once they've been placed. This is actually funny. You're getting me on one, I'm getting you on one. No, the counters have to initially be placed on it is actually a ruling for it. So it's something, again, there's some little tricky things that happen to it.
Interesting.
Because it's like there's no counters put on it. Once the last one's removed is the ruling wording. So
Right.
none of them are on there, none of them were removed. That's the
Right.
issue. So
Interesting.
you have to have the land out first and then play Solemnity. But again, you can also go the hard way and just brute force this thing, go mono green and huge mana doublers, and you can go ahead and make it so this thing can come out and make it so you get a indestructible 20/20 creature.
Even still, this is not really a commander card. I mean, you could play it in commander, but I don't really see a whole lot of it.
It depends.
This
on what
is
you're
actually
doing.
a competitive card because people run entire decks that are based around the Thespian stage combo with this and just getting that 20/20 indestructible avatar out very early on.
See, I didn't think clones copy. Oh no, it's not copying the tokens, the counters that are on it. They're copying the actual
whatever it
ETB
is. Yeah,
effect.
exactly.
Okay, and that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you're still with us after all that rolling, we're going to go on to the third card here.
So number 3 on our list for $20 is Braid of Fire.
Oh,
now this is a red enchantment, costs 2 mana, and is one of those weird cumulative upkeep cards. However, this is one of those even weirder ones where the cumulative upkeep is actually a positive.
It's gotten better with time.
Yeah, and it's just a very simple one. It's just add red to your mana pool. So at the beginning of your upkeep, you put an age counter on it, and then you sacrifice it unless you pay the upkeep cost for each age counter on it. So essentially, this just nets you more and more red mana every single turn it stays around. Also, proliferate is a thing now, so putting more age counters on this just makes it even better. The only downside to this entire thing is that you only get that mana during your upkeep.
Right. Now, there are ways around that. You could use something that we see other ways to store your mana for later. And Red actually just got one, actually. The
Horizon.
dragon.
Well, the dragon, the Leyline Tyrant. I was going to
Yes.
say the artifact Horizon Stone, which basically gives you the power of Crufix the
Both
God.
of them.
So.
Yeah, both of them. But being in mono red itself, the dragon is one of the more iconics.
Yeah.
Now, this is from an era. Like, you're probably like, what? And the reason is mana burn was a thing in the game. Now it's become a thing back in the game with a commander who enables mana burn again.
And this is a great place to use that, actually.
It is. But this is also a great way, since Red's all about flinging spells at instant speed, this is a way to go ahead and have all that mana, and you can go ahead and utilize that. But you can also use it for tap effects or tap abilities, and that's also something really good as well. And I'll look at an example like Jaya Ballard Task Mage, where you have a whole bunch of different tap effects for a whole bunch of different mana costs. Go ahead, use all that mana, plunge it into there, and now you're still having all your lands untapped, and you can use that effect. You're restricted on when you use it, but again, it's giving you a huge help. The only thing is this takes a little bit of time to snowball. So late game, it feels bad. Early game, it feels great.
Exactly. And you took the words right out of my mouth. When you can play at instant speed, this card, it really, really shines. Or if you have some way to preserve that mana, I guess that works too.
Yeah.
But really weird, because unlike most cumulative upkeep cards, this only gets better with time, and there's really no downside anymore.
This is one of the cards, I feel like an Enchantress deck would love it, but it doesn't really work out in that kind of way for it. It's, again, but either way, it's a great card. It was recently reprinted in a mystery box set, and it's still around 20 bucks. Before that, it was ridiculous because people are like, wait, this card exists?
Yeah.
Everyone forgot about this, and now it came like flooding through.
Speaking of things everyone forgot about, let's go on to our number 4, Scrying Sheets. Now this is another awesome land from Coldsnap. At the time of this writing, it was $15, but I believe it's gone up since then. This actually may have replaced Braid of Fire as the number 3 money card. We have it at number 4 right now. It's possible. But anyway, this is a snow land that comes into play untapped and immediately can tap to give you 1 colorless mana. That's fine. However, if you tap 1 mana and 1 snow mana and you then look at the top card of your deck, and if that card is a snow card, you can reveal it and put it into your hand. This recently shot up in value because of the new Kaldheim set that is just about to come out, which is reintroducing snow permanence into the game in a big way. It was already a little bit of that in some previous sets like Modern Horizons. However, this card is a really, really great card for any kind of snow-based deck because it's basically either a scry or, you can draw a card essentially. And now that there are snow instants and sorceries, and there are even, some snow lands and snow creatures, there's more snow things than ever before. makes it much more likely that this is just tap 2, draw a card.
Yeah, it can whiff, and at that point you're kind of like, it feels bad. But if you're using this effect, at that point you're already trying to propel your deck because you're looking for answers. But a land that can do that for you is great. It doesn't enter play tapped, it passes the vanilla test, it can only just do more for you. It's great, it really is great. And again, with the lands, a lot of decks use snow permanent lands because, well, the lens, interplanar lens. And that's a way that makes it so you can double your mana without giving your opponents a benefit. Now, again, with everyone getting snow lands, that might not be the case anymore, but it's still something that is great to have. It's useful. You can utilize it in a variety of ways. And again, for decks that have a hard time drawing cards, having it on a land is very good.
Agreed, but not a whole lot more to say about that. Let's go on to our number 5 still.
All right, at our number 5, we're looking at a card called Commandeer. Now, Commandeer is around $14, and this beautiful card here can do one thing, and one thing very well. For 7 mana, you can go ahead and pretty much gain control of target non-creature spell, and you may choose new targets for it. So it can be an instant, a sorcery, a permanent, a planeswalker, whatever. It's really good because you just go ahead and it counts as you casting it more or less. However, the thing that really makes this card shine is that you can go ahead and remove 2 blue cards from your hand from the game instead of paying this cost for this card. So you can pay 7 mana like you would for like a cyclonic, or you can just exile 2 cards in your hand to go ahead and take something. That could be a counter spell, that could be a removal spell, that can just be somebody's commander.
Yeah, and again, it's not countering, it's actually taking control of that spell, which is even better.
Yeah, 100%. So it can make it so, sure, like some spells that can't be countered, they're usually creatures are the ones that you want to go ahead and get around. It's like Prowling Cephalopod. That's a creature that goes ahead and makes it so other creatures can't be countered. Well, if you only have counter spells in your hand, you would need something like this as an answer, or something like a Venser to go ahead and just bounce it back until you have to deal with it again later. This is like a more permanent option.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, again, it can be free. I mean, some of the most powerful cards in the history of the game have been free spells like Force of Will, is exactly what I would compare this to.
100%.
However, the fact that this can't target creatures makes it a little bit worse, and the fact that you do have to remove 2 cards
you can't
instead
take someone's
of 1
commander.
card.
I totally goofed on that one. My mistake right there.
Well, actually, you could now because some of the Kaldheim commanders come in as not creatures. So
You can take them
it's
as an
even
equivalent.
more relevant now.
Yeah, my mistake on creatures.
Yeah, however, again, just like we were talking about with Fury of the Horde before, if you play this for 7 mana, it's going to feel really bad because this is way overcosted. There's a card already called Aether Snatch that actually is 6 mana, that is 1 less, and it does this exact same thing, except it can take control of creatures and anything else.
The only difference is you can't cheat.
You can't make it for free. Well, you could, but you know it doesn't have that built in.
Yeah, you have to go through hoops.
So there are some differences, but essentially this is a really interesting sort of pseudo counterspell that blue has that you really don't see a lot of, but that's because it's very powerful when you do.
And a good thing also about this is it doesn't care what cards you discard. It just matters that they're blue. Like if you have something like a Painter Servant to go ahead and make it so everything is blue, at that point you can just toss lands and it doesn't matter.
Right. So yeah, pretty much great card, really.
All right, now moving on to number 6. Now this is the one card, if you don't mind me going into this one.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is the one card that is infamous for everyone's, should it go in my deck? It's called Counterbalance. Now this is an enchantment that is a 2-drop for double blue. And it reads, whenever an opponent plays a spell, you may reveal the top card of your library. And if you do, counter that spell if it is the same converted mana cost as the card revealed. Now, I know what you're thinking. Free counterspell? Yes, this is great. But will it hit? And that's the big issue with this, because if you run this in your deck as a slot of a counterspell, it's not as reliable. However, it can be better than a counterspell because it can maybe counter multiple spells. It all depends on what's on the top of your deck, and there are decks out there that love to manipulate the top card.
Well, also, if you just play cards like a Soothsaying or a Sensei's Divining Top or a Scroll Rack, you can control what's on top of your deck very easily.
Sure.
And be able to dictate exactly what people can play and what they can't. Counterbalance doesn't play as well in Commander as it does in other places because there's just so much variation.
Yeah.
But in like 60 card Magic competitively, counterbalance is extremely powerful because most of the time you're going up against decks that are known quantities. You know what their key cards are. You know what you have to stop
Yeah,
and
3 drops,
what
2
you're
drops,
looking for.
1 drops.
Exactly, and they're mostly lower drops anyway. So counterbalance is very good in that sense. In Commander, I've seen it work and I've seen it be a pain to deal with, but overall, I'm not too afraid of this card in Commander.
100, yeah. I mean, yes and no, because again, if the person is doing something like CEDH, like, let's just take that in for example. What's the typical mana curve for CEDH? Well, it depends on what the commander is, because some cards you just can't say no to because it works so well with your commander. Is it a 5-drop? Heck, is it a 7-drop? Sometimes, even in CEDH, you'll see some cards like that where it's just like, hey, yeah, you're not going to be able to counter this with this card because your mana curve is too low or it's too high. And being able to make it predictable in that case, it's not as easy. Again, you need utility. You need something to do it because there's no commander as of right now that can just flat out do that for you.
Still, pretty great card though.
Pretty great
really
card.
worth talking about.
Now go for it, Kyle. Make it go at 7.
All right, well, another blue card here on our list, number 7 at $12 is Arkham Dagson, and this is a legendary creature, so it is commander material.
100%
and it really
is. Yeah.
For 4 mana, you get a 2/2 Human Artificer with a tap ability. Target artifact creature's controller sacrifices it. That player may then search their library for a non-creature artifact, put it into play, and then shuffle their deck. So this is a really infamous competitive level commander because of this extremely powerful tutoring ability. So just imagine sacrificing a lowly Thopter token to immediately scale up to a Darksteel Citadel. That's what we're talking about here. So going from a 0 to a 9-drop. Darksteel Forge, you're right. The one that makes all your artifacts
Because I think the other one's a
indestructible.
land.
Yeah, no, I think you're right
But
about
that's still
that.
a good play.
Yeah, well, you could do that too, but you know, I'd much rather get the Darksteel Forge. But
I'd rather a Blightsteel.
yeah, well, the point, yeah, unfortunately, you can't get that with this.
I know.
The point is that this is like it provides a great setup for a bunch of different combo decks. And especially the really like well-known one is using Mycosynth Lattice to turn everything into artifacts.
And just
then
go ahead
using,
and plunge through.
Well, you can steal them all with Memnarch. You'd use Kill Switch to permanently tap down everyone's battlefield. It's no fun to have to play against this card, I'm telling you. So I personally would not make this my commander, but I would love to because it is pretty cool, actually. If you're not going to do degenerate things, it's just kind of good and fun.
It is. I think it's a card, it's like if you're trying to be leisurely with it, it's better in the 99. It's something like I'd say closer to Master Transmuter in the fact of what you're kind of getting out of it. Like, sure, you can do some sort of big impact plays, but it's telegraphed. People are going to know about it. Like, and this one's a little bit more random. Again, if you're playing with the top deck, you're like, what's going on? Sure, you can go ahead and sneak something in. I'll brainstorm real fast to make it so I have what I need on top or something like that.
This guy's also kind of fallen out of favor over the years because people like having more colors in their commander decks. You know, some of the partners have taken over.
Yeah, but he's still been iconic. So actually, funny thing for the history of this card, this is another one, people forgot this card existed. And then this card skyrocketed again. And people are like, wow, this is a really powerful effect. Well, yeah, it is a very powerful effect.
Yeah, it is. It's a tinker.
Yeah, the only thing that you really need is just attack on Wizard, and then this thing is good to go. But
much.
And I think this also got reprinted in the mystery box as well, and it's still at this. So again, it's something a little less secretive now, but again, a powerful card.
Definitely. And if you don't mind, Stu, I'd love to take the next one as
go
well because
for it,
I have
Cal.
a great story here. So number 8 on our list of money cards is the unassuming Nishras Bauble at $10 a copy. So for this one, it's a 0-drop artifact with the simple tap ability that you sacrifice it. You look at the top card of any player's library and then draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So this is, I think, just a hilariously overpriced card on the money cards list simply because it is a 0-drop artifact. The 0-drop free cards are always good when they're artifacts. That's probably the most broken it can get for a number of reasons. And it does draw you cards, even if it is a little bit delayed. This, for the longest time, wasn't worth anything, and it was like 10 cents. And I remember years ago getting a playset of these for some like janky 60 card deck that I was playing around with.
Probably.
And then going back like 6 months later and finding out it was then worth 40 bucks. And I immediately sold all of them and made a nice profit. It is, of course, not that high anymore. However, going from like 10 cents to 10 bucks, that's a pretty good investment for anyone out there who spent their money on these at some point.
Yeah. Well, so the reason why it's so high, so it is a zero drop, like you said. Zero drops are great in a variety of formats outside of Commander, just for the competitive nature of a zero drop artifact. It goes for affinity, it goes for storm count, it goes for just good value. And this right here for good value, it is. It replaces itself, which is kind of a key thing for most cards, but also you don't need to target yourself for this. And that's actually the one thing that people overlooked initially with this card. You'll go ahead, play this, target an opponent. You draw a card, right? So you know what's in their hand, you know what's coming up, and especially for in competitive strategies, you write that card down, you know what is coming up later. Do that 4 times, you know 4 cards in their deck. Do it every game, you have an idea of what they don't have yet, or what they do have, or what you have to worry about, or what's a problem piece. That information is vastly underrated by a lot of people who just come into the game.
I don't know. I wonder if that
Like Kyle.
even. I wonder if that like even matters though. Honestly, like
Yeah,
I would
it
never.
does.
That is like arguably the part of this card I care the least about.
See, that's the thing. It's like, if you were to look at the 1-drop blue instants and sorceries, where it's like Brainstorm, Ponder, Gitaxian Probe, right? Which one's the strongest out of those 3?
I mean, I'm honestly not a huge fan of like any of those cards, but that's just me. I know a lot of people
You're
are.
missing the point, Kyle. Out of those 3 cards, which one would you want to have in your opening hand?
Well, you're trying to talk about Probe because it lets you see someone else's hand, and it's free, of course. So.
No, Brainstorm. Yeah, of course, Probe. Yeah, that's the whole
Yeah.
idea. Getting information that's outside of your own deck makes it so that you know what plays are smart plays. Anyone can look back on a game and be like, I should have played this. Well, let's take that factor out and do it right now and be like, oh, I need to play this in response to this. And that's the whole point of those kind of cards. And this is one of them.
And 0-drop artifacts. This is yet another artifact that makes Urza, Lord High Artificer, really, really powerful.
Yeah, just go ahead, play it out, use it for mana until you need to get rid of it.
And that's probably why it's still so expensive. But anyway, let's move on from artifacts to a card focusing on enchantments.
Enchantments. Now this is a card that is another CDH thing. Zur the Enchanter. Now this is an infamous card for people loving the card and hating the art. It costs 4 mana and it is an Esper, so that means 1 generic, 1 plains, 1 island, and 1 swamp for a human wizard that is legendary with a 1/4 body. It has flying, and if that wasn't enough, whenever this card attacks, you may search your library for an enchantment card with converted mana cost 3 or left, and just put it directly into play, and then afterwards you shuffle your library. Free stuff for free is great. Free samples are delicious and we all love them. This is more than that because it gets the entire entree for free.
Yeah.
So you do the attack declaration with this card, and this is a commander. It is 100% a commander. On the attack declaration, you go ahead and you bring something out before the blockers are even declared or anything else like that. You go ahead and you can get, again, look into 3-drop enchantments that are in these colors, and there is a lot. There's a lot of versatility, a lot of devastation, and a lot of control.
Yeah, I mean, there's just like some of the more disgusting things like solitary confinements, energy fields, things that just totally shut down the entire game. And that's the whole point of this. I mean, even if you were just thinking of it on the like really stupid baseline of like getting an Oblivion Ring every turn, that's still pretty good.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, Banishing Light, something else like that. Yeah,
that's still great. And also, not only are you shutting other people down, but you can get powerful auras out of your deck, and you can just Voltron people to death with Zur.
You can build this card, this deck, a couple different ways, and that's kind of the dangerous part of it as well, because you could have one Zur deck fight another Zur deck and not know which one's going to win. Not because it's like a bland game to watch, but because it is so intense.
Yeah. And it's just, this is such a, I mean, I love the free stuff, and I love the tutoring and all that. I love a good enchantment deck, but this is just such an unfun card to have to play against. It is miserable.
Yeah, if commanders that tutor, there's a huge power level on them compared to the most, typically. Like, but this one's in its own class, because if you were to compare this to something like a Mormir Vig, Mormir Vig needs a little bit more to go through, whereas this one goes on its own.
Yeah.
And that's the difference with something like this. So if you're interested in making a budget deck that's really decent, this is a decent commander for that.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, there are some more expensive options that you can put in. Obviously,
always.
it's more of the lockdown aspect. But if you want to just make, you know, a more casual kind of enchantment Voltron type deck, I mean, this still could work.
Yeah.
People will still hate you, but it'll work.
He's one of them.
Anyway.
So moving on to our final card of
Yes,
the set, the last money.
Yeah, and another legend here for our consideration. Number 10 for about $5 here. We've got Darion, King of Keldheim. So this is a 6-drop, kind of a large one here. 3/3 Human Lord. Yes, back when Lord was still actually a creature type.
It's funny.
So whenever you're dealt damage, you may put that many 1/1 white soldier creature tokens into play.
So has this been oracled to combat damage, or is this any damage?
No, it is any damage at
Okay.
all. Yeah, so if it's whether it's a fireball or whether it's a bunch of creatures attacking you, you get that many soldiers. And I mean, obviously, I'm not a huge fan of this for the simple reason that it doing anything involves you getting hurt, which I am not really a huge fan of. However, the payoff is pretty big. I mean, if you're just, if you're taking 10 damage, for example, you get 10 tokens off that, that's not too bad, really.
So loss of life would not work with this then?
No.
Okay. But still, I mean, there are mana rocks. There is the one where it's like you go ahead, you tap this, and damage is dealt to you or all
Yes.
other players and stuff like that. You have pingers. You have, again, you can play some cards and it just happens to deal damage to you. If this had black tacked onto it, oh my god.
Yeah, I would be very worried about that.
Yeah, or red. The fact that this is mono white gives you a bit more of a fighting chance. However, this is still a lot of damage that is done, and yeah, it does what it needs to do.
Yeah, it's interesting. I definitely don't think it's in danger of becoming like the mono white commander. I really don't think it is.
No, and this card,
But-
if anything's been outclassed a little bit over the years because
Yeah.
it is a 6 mana for a 3/3.
Not really that impressive.
And the effect has to do stuff on your opponent's turn. Again, if you're building it that way, if you're building it for yourself, again, you're paying 6 mana for that. You're not usually going to have a lot of other mana to sit around and do something else with.
Yeah, however, it's not one of those things you can ignore either, because if you're just going to keep swinging at somebody with this out, suddenly they'll have this enormous army of tokens, and you're like, wait, how did that happen? But
Yeah.
it was all you.
Yeah, I mean, it is tokens. There's a lot of ways to deal with tokens, but ever since Anointed Oppression came out, this is something that's also gotten a little bit of support as time has progressed.
A very interesting card, but yeah, not one of the better mono white commanders in my opinion.
Nope. But that is going to wrap up our last little bit on Coldsnap here. We have looked at the set, we have seen the monies, we have seen the hidden gems. If you're interested in seeing the hidden gems, they're in our previous videos. If you're interested to see what cards you might have lying around that might be better than you think.
Yeah, if you're interested in any of these, we'd love to know what you think, and you can find us on any of our social media channels to do that. We're on Reddit. We have our own subreddit dedicated to our own content. We're also on Tapped Out, where all of our deck lists live, and we're on Facebook and Twitter, and you can find us all at the handle The Card Pool on those.
And any of these cards you like, you use, or you feel like there's something just needed to be added to these cards, put it down in the comments below. Let us know, we're the community, and it's all good at that point.
Please do. We welcome the discussion. So, without further ado, let's wrap it up. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Stu.
And we'll see you next time at the Card Pool.
My one buddy found a handful of Mishras baubles and like going through comments, he's like, oh,
So lucky.
yeah, it just feels good digging those out.